We heard you.
Right.
We heard you
Yep.
say you want a
Yeah.
better way to
Yeah.
pay.
Right.
We heard you say you want a smoother ride.
Yes.
We heard you say you want new amenities. We heard you say you want a platform like this to be able to talk about these things.
Every ride has a destination. Every trip has a story. Beyond the tracks and pavement, it's the people who bring Greater Cleveland to life, connecting communities and fueling our future. This is Driving Connections, the official podcast of the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority. Notice, third-party advertisements may be inserted by podcast distribution platforms and played before, during, or after GCRTA's podcast episode. These advertisements are not selected, affiliated, or endorsed by the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority.
Welcome to Driving Connections, the official podcast of the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority. I'm your host, Ron Allen. GCRTA is more than buses and more than trains. During each episode, we'll explore the people, partnerships, and possibilities that help keep Northeast Ohio moving, while sharing stories from riders and communities we serve. So whether you're a daily rider, an occasional customer, or simply interested in the future of public transportation in our region, we're glad you're here. Today, I'm honored to be joined by India Birdsong Terry, the General Manager and Chief Executive Officer of the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority. India brings years of public transportation leadership experience and is helping guide GCRTA's efforts to improve service, strengthen community partnerships, and continue connecting people to opportunity throughout Northeast Ohio. India, thank you for joining us. And thank you for helping launch our very first episode of Driving Connections.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here. Can I just say that out loud? I'm
Ditto.
super excited. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you for picking me too. All right.
You did it.
All right. So could you tell us a little bit about you for those in our audience who might not know, like where your background started and all that?
So again, really excited to be here with everyone listening in, right out in the stratosphere, wherever you may be. Thank you.
Welcome. All right.
Thank you for just sharing a little bit of your time with me. This is great to be here as the kind of kickoff episode. I have been in the industry in transit for about 20 years now, which sounds a lot longer than it feels. I started in Chicago Transit Authority, but I have a background in community development and urban planning. I'm an urban planner by trade. So that's what I went to school for. Thought about being a lawyer and kind of took the LSAT and then said, no, that's not me.
Okay.
But I am dangerous enough with a red pen, right?
All right.
Was an editor before that and had a different life in that lane. But really urban planning brought me into transportation. I started in transit at the Chicago Transit Authority in Chicago, Illinois, is where I'm from. But now have been in Cleveland for well over 6 years, coming up on 7 in this job. I came to Cleveland for this job specifically. So RTA plays a special place in my heart. Kind of came through the ranks. I've done every shift that you can come up with. So I've done, the 5 a.m., the 4 a.m., the 2 a.m., the 9 a.m., the 11 p.m., whatever you can think of. I'm sure you understand that as a money handler. Yes. And you really get to understand the guts of public transit. Went through planning, operations, emergency management, also training and instruction, which is really important. My family is half of them, well over half are educators.
Okay.
And then we have entrepreneurs and all different kind of things. And so we're very opinionated and research-based. So if you don't know the answer to something, the familial answer is go look it up. Right. And so I like to keep that in mind every day as transportation professionals do. We like to look things up, but also explain to people what's going on. So after Chicago Transit Authority, I went over to Nashville. And I was the chief operating officer there. I'd been in CTA in Chicago for about 10 years. Spent about 4 and some change in Nashville, and then came here to Cleveland. And I'm coming up on 7 years, which is crazy, as a general manager and CEO here at RTA. And it's really been a transformational time, I think, for me and my family. I have 2 small children, married, and husband is a planner too, which
Okay.
lends for definite debates at
Yeah.
the dinner table, right? Non-conflict of interest, but
Right.
definitely talking about just social things.
Right.
And then being able to really understand Cleveland and hopefully making it a better place.
Right. Okay.
And RTA really was important. It's special. We've been around for over 50 years. So we've been doing this thing right for a long time, but it's time to be able to revamp, right? The podcast
Okay.
and really get our name back out there.
All right. And that leads me to my first question. Like,
Okay.
where did the podcast idea come from? Like,
Yeah.
like why now?
So you could probably see my eyes light up when you said that, right? We were talking in the We is collective. So Natoya Walker Minor, our deputy for external affairs, shout out to Natoya. She is our resident cheerleader here and the entire marketing team. We really were sitting down trying to figure out how do we get our name back out there through rebranding. And that could be for the internal customer. It could be for the external customer. We're trying to figure out how do we get people engaged? How do we hear from our customers? How do we really hear from our internal folks, folks like yourself, for example, that are diamonds in the rough that we may not know we even had. I always like to say we like to think that we're the most important company, right, in your life, but there's other things that come in front of RTA, whether it's your family, whether it's a hobby you have. You know, you may be an amazing artist, right? You may be a great orator. You may be a singer. All kind of things. We have mechanics that can do amazing things outside of a bus, right? Whether it's motorcycles or even aviation, there's all things that people come to us with. And if we don't tap into that knowledge and that talent, then we start to constrain ourselves. So we thought about how do we get back to the communication? Okay. And there were a lot of our partners, Tri-C, shout out to Tri-C. Yes. They're an amazing partner in workforce for us, and they have a podcast room. They were just building at that time. Okay. And then also there's a few others that are out there, of course. And our advertising partners, Brokaw at the time, we have AdCom that we're working with now. They all have podcast rooms. And to be quite frank, I got tired of signing off on the reservation. Okay. Right. And so we thought, how can we bring this in-house? And I'll just say this to be quick. Our maintenance team built this. Right. Right. Nice. And that's amazing. Yeah. It's in-house work. Okay. It's union work. Yeah. It's work with pride. It was done at a slower pace so that we don't kind of put this ahead of other things that we knew we needed to get done. So shout out to the team that put this together. I call them HGTV. They know who they are, right? They definitely put the sweat equity in. And it's just really a source of pride. So we're able to get our branding out there and keep up with the pace of technology.
Okay. We learned a great deal so far. Here at GCRTA, we really do hear you. One of the things we're most excited about with this podcast is the opportunity to share real stories from the real people who use our system every day. Let's take a moment to hear from one of our riders, Jerome, a young professional who chose Cleveland because transit made opportunity accessible.
Every ride has a story. This is mine. My name is Jerome Hamilton Jr. I've been riding GCRTA for the last 10 months. I use the Health Line as well as the 45, 25, and 51. Yeah, I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland. I've actually been around, a couple of places, but yeah, I mean, I came here for work, opportunity through the Cleveland Foundation. I chose, RTA actually had a factor in why I chose my location in Cleveland. So I decided to live downtown because getting the Health Line to work would just be really easy. It would actually, alleviate that travel burden for me since it's just so reliable, and it really has been over the last 10 months for sure. I think it's important, especially for me in public service, to actually be on the ground somewhere, So obviously for RTA, that would be I would love, to see folks from the top, just literally just out here riding the Health Line or out here, riding really any of these lines, connecting with people, they can understand from the perspective of people that are using the system and are actively seeking that out.
right. Great story. So what stuck out to you most about that? Like what caught your attention?
So first, it's great to see people like Jerome
Yeah.
to be able to really share their story. It's just the everyday writer, but he's doing great things.
Yeah.
Came here for work.
Yeah.
You find that a lot of people come to Cleveland for different things.
Yeah.
School and work are a lot of them. I'm the same way, right? Came here for work. I appreciate that he wants to see the leadership writing. Being able to show that we use the system that we build is really important. I will say that the higher you go in your career professionally, sometimes the further away you get from the work. And that's the downside, right, of having a title like mine, for example, but it doesn't keep me from writing the system. So it's interesting that our team has said the same thing. So what Jerome is saying is echoed in our conversations. We have had a couple of programs lately that has really gotten people to come back to writing, especially as you're maneuvering, your day. So we have a program that's called Going to Gemba, which is a Japanese phrase, which is going to the root of it or going to the source, and really seeing it for yourself, whatever the it is. And for us, the it is public transportation. So because we build it and we, have data on it and we study it all day, it's not the same as going out and seeing what the everyday customer feels. We've gotten, I think there are over 1,000 feedback forms and rides now that are captured throughout the Gemba system. We've only been doing it for about half a year, coming up on about a year total for our kind of ridership council internally. That's another mechanism that we have to get feedback from customers that are not just the external customer, but the internal too. A lot of our planners ride the system every day just to go to the grocery store, not just come to work. We have, engineers, we have lawyers, we have maintenance personnel, all who ride the system. Our leadership, my deputy team ride the system. I try to get out there as much as I can as well. It's always difficult when you're managing a hectic schedule. But RTA is trying to get better at that to make sure that our frequency and our connections are there and they're programmed in a way where you don't have to wait too long. And that way we can be there for the journey. So I appreciate Jerome and I appreciate the recommendation. We hear you and we'll be out there and seeing you soon.
All right, great. Sounds good. Like I said, here at GCRTA, we do hear you. We are embracing new ways and new forms of technology to increase ridership, but also to make it more convenient and easy for the riders, for yourself. So India, what new projects do we have that you're excited about that's going to help our riders?
So thank you for the question. I've been waiting for the platform to be able to talk about a couple of things that we have coming up, or actually that are going on now, a combination of both. So I'll start with explaining the fare capping initiative, account-based ticketing. I know we're going to talk about that coming soon.
Right.
So keep tuned for that. Stay tuned for that. But it's really a program that I am excited about because it's been a long time in the making. We have been talking about this for quite a while here at RTA, even before my tenure, to really get to equalizing and kind of leveling the playing field when it comes to the economics of the customers that we serve. So we want to make sure that once you hit a certain amount, whether it's the same amount as you would pay for an all-day pass, or a weekly pass or a monthly pass, your rides then become free for the remainder of the month. And that really allows the customer that we have that's less economically advantaged to be able to pay the same sort of fare that someone who could buy a weekly pass and a monthly pass at one fell swoop, right? You don't have the difference in impact on the wallet. We want to be able to make riding easier. And I think we really believe that the Smartcard program does that. So when you see the little character, it kind of looks like SpongeBob to me, but you'll see him. Smart Artie is what we call him. And he's a kind of square caricature, yellow, bright yellow, so you can't miss it. And it really brings us up to par with a lot of the traditional agencies that have been around for a long time. If you go to Washington, D.C., or you go to New York City, or you go to Atlanta, you go to Chicago, you know, all these areas have a smart card. They have an account-based ticketing system. Cleveland now does as well. So we're in the game now, right? You got to be able to get in there. A couple other things, if I could mention, that I think thank you, that are really exciting. See, this is what the podcast is for. Remember that, is to be able to talk about railcar replacement. I mentioned it before, but it's really a showstopper of a project. It is 45 years in the making,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the response I want.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
we've been waiting a while.
Mhm.
We are capping out somewhere between 435 and 450 million right now. We're adjusting how many rail cars we're able to get, but we will be replacing every rail car that we have in the system.
All right.
Within the next 3 years. The first rail car is expected to get here in Cleveland later this fall.
Okay.
So we're super excited. And then we've got to take it through the QA,
Right,
QC,
right.
quality testing.
Yeah.
And this time next year, you'll be able to ride a new rail car.
Okay.
And that's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
The folks that we have working on that program, it's the first in a generation to be able to do it.
All right.
So that's going from, again, 1980s technology to 2026. That's going to give us an opportunity to be able to talk to those riders and say, we heard you.
Right.
We heard you say you want a better way to pay.
Right.
We heard you say you want a smoother ride.
Yes.
We heard you say you want new amenities. We heard you say you want a platform like this to be able to talk about these things.
Nice.
So all that being said, we're super excited. One more thing I'll add in is our playing around in the economic space of transit-oriented development. And that's a lot of words to be able to say, we want to help be the economic driver for Greater Cleveland.
Okay.
We are having a concerted effort to work with mom and pop shops, and I say that respectfully, small businesses that have become big and can be bigger, but for public transit. Okay. And so Maselli Dairy is a really good example of that. We just had an article come out this morning. Hopefully you'll check it out and we'll be able to do a little spot on that at some point to be able to understand how RTA plays a space in the real estate game, to be able to utilize what we have available as far as real estate and developmental opportunities to help expand family businesses. And so it's our way of being able to get new ridership streams, but also being able to let people know that RTA is an accessible option for their workforce. All right. And it's great. We're excited about it. And just a couple things to be able to whet the palate for the new episode.
Okay, awesome. All right, you guys, you got to stay tuned to Driving Connections. We're going to be bringing you a lot more information and a lot more informative stories. Before we move on into our next portion of the show, we like to pause for a quick break.
Hi, everyone. Quick break to bring you a game changer for your daily commute here in Greater Cleveland. GCRTA recently introduced a brand new, highly convenient way to ride and save money: account-based ticketing and fare capping. Previously, to save money on fares, you had to buy a weekly or monthly pass up front. Now you can just pay as you go using a reloadable GCRTA, Smartcard, or the Easy Fare or Transit apps. Tap the card or scan the apps as you board, and the system automatically tracks your trips. Once your individual rides add up to the price of a daily, 7-day, or monthly pass, you stop being charged. The rest of your rides for that period are completely free. It's the lowest fare guaranteed. But don't just hear it from us. Hear what a rider has to say.
I'm really glad that that RTA has these smart cards, these transit cards now, because it's just going to make the experience a lot smoother for the riders. Smart card's a great idea. The smart card is a fantastic idea.
Experience a more convenient way to move forward. Head over to riderta.com/fares/fare capping right now to learn more. That is riderta.com/fares/fare capping. Tap or scan, save and go.
So, did you know public transportation is something many people use every day? But there are also a lot of things happening behind the scenes that most riders may not know about and may want to learn about. I introduced to you our Did You Know segment. Let's go off-road and learn together how public transportation is funded.
Did you know? Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority covers its operating expenses primarily from 1% sales and use tax and passenger fare revenues. The main revenue streams are generated through sales and use tax, passenger fares, and other miscellaneous revenues. Sales tax is the largest source of revenues, accounting for 83% of GCRTA operating revenues. It is a 1% tax collection on retail sales throughout Cuyahoga County. For passenger fares, revenues are generated from daily riders using GCRTA buses, trains, and paratransit services. This also includes cash fares, reloadable fare cards, accounting for 9% of operating revenues. The remaining 8% of operating revenues come from various miscellaneous sources such as advertisement, investment income, and leases and rentals. GCRTA's day-to-day transit operations and system maintenance are primarily funded by these sources of revenues. Capital revenues. The Capital Improvement Program relies on a mix of federal and state grants and debt financing, which is supplemented by local match funds. Revenues received for capital projects are geared towards system expansion, infrastructure upgrades, rolling stock purchases, like our Railcar program, and major repairs to our capital assets, such as equipment purchases, station upgrades, and track repairs. Large capital projects are heavily subsidized by Federal Transit Administration, known as FTA. They have contributed over 57% supporting our capital program. Another source of funding comes from the State of Ohio Department of Transportation, known as ODOT, currently supporting GCRTA 20% capital program. To secure federal grants, GCRTA must contribute a local match. This is typically funded by transferring a portion of the sales and use tax for capital programming, representing 22% of support for the capital program. If there is a need for debt financing, GCRTA will issue bonds to raise funds for major capital projects and pay for local match for federal grants. And that's how GCRTA is funded.
How awesome. That was a lot of information.
It was.
Yeah. So why do you feel it's important for riders and community members also to know how we're funded?
Oh, that's the question of the day.
Yeah.
That's the question of the year, actually. So having an education and a broad knowledge base of how RTA is funded is really essential to understanding our longevity. And so if you don't know, then you're missing out. Okay. So, and it also is a reflection on how we're able to educate people on what's really under the hood. Ohio is definitely a state that's in need of investment in public transportation financially. Okay. We are a recipient of the vestiges of history when it comes to public transit. And when I say that, Carnegie and the Rockefellers and all of those folks that kind of poured into Cleveland well over 100 years ago, you can see the remnants of the transit that has kind of limped along really since that time. With the resurgence of the population, we definitely took a decline and we're still trying to catch back up. Over the last, let's call it 30, 40 years, particularly the last 50 we've been in existence, public transit has not been keeping pace with the financial investment that's necessary to keep us moving and keep us transformative. We're talking about things such as tax levy potential for the upcoming years, right? Trying to figure out when's the best fit. A big piece of that is because the last time we were at the ballot box was 1975. Wow. That is a great example of an opportunity to really tell our story. So when you get back into the kind of the trifecta that was mentioned, I think that was Carolyn Young, if I'm not mistaken, who was doing the voiceover for that commercial. She's our grants director. How do we go out and get funding? How do we win the packages, right? Our rail is huge, and our replacement of that rail, infrastructure is our biggest project to date, nearly $450 million. That's an amazing amount of infrastructure, an amazing amount of investment. So to answer your question, we have to get out there. We have to let people know that public transit is not free. Someone pays for it, even if it's not the person paying the $250, right, through the fare. It costs to be able to come out here and provide that mobility option for folks every day. And it's worth the money. It really is. When you think about the $2.50 that generally you pay to ride RTA, there are millions of dollars backing that seat that you have taken to get you from point A to B. And we have to be able to get the business community, our riders, our employees, our supporters and advocates to understand just how much it costs to kind of play the transportation game in Cleveland.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. One more question.
Mm-hmm.
What excites you the most about the future of GCRTA?
That's a great question, Ron. What excites me the most? Local here in Cleveland or just transportation
Yeah,
general?
just local.
Okay.
Great
Great question.
Mm-hmm.
So what excites me most is really the potential of who we could be. I mentioned before, I talked a little bit about the education of the funding for public transit. So now let's get into the vision. Yeah. That's what really gets me excited.
Okay.
I'm a planner by trade, right? So a planner that gets into operations is dangerous.
Okay.
And then an operations person who gets into administration, a lot more dangerous,
right?
Because you're able to really imagine what could be. For Cleveland, I always say we have good bones here.
Mm-hmm.
We have the foundation. We just need to have the upkeep, the maintenance, and then the innovation on top of it. Technology is something that I think RTA really can serve as an example for.
Okay.
We have over 2,000 employees, super smart, very engaged, and a lot of pride goes into RTA. Cleveland is a very well-kept secret.
Yeah.
And as a transplant, you kind of understand that too, or a boomerang, is that we have jewels here, especially in public transit. We have a transit police force that typically that doesn't always come with the game of transportation, right? Having your own transit police, having a rail system, having a in-house paratransit system that's, has a couple partners that helps us through that. Understanding that we have a foothold in the community and we can expand with gusto. We have the grid network, the street network to be able to connect communities that are already built. A lot of cities that are our counterparts it's no man's land in between one neighborhood and the next. We have the route infrastructure already there. All we have to do is figure out how to put the buses and the trains on the line.
I got you. Okay.
And as soon as we can start to really connect people from one area to another, that's the golden opportunity to be able to resurge the population back to Cleveland. And really, that's the ultimate goal, to make the transportation network work to be able to attract the population back to greater Cleveland. And if we can be able to lick that, then we've got anything.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. That sounds awesome. One more question I'd like to pose to you. Of course, we're just doing our first episode here at Driving Connections, but what is the future that you see for Driving Connections? What is the vision for this podcast?
So great question. In order to say, what's the beginning, you've got to kind of look at the end, I think. At the end of the day, I would love to be able to see this podcast really bring real life stories to the listeners, right? And be able to have the internal customer as well as the external customer understand what happens underneath the hood of RTA. So I think you're going to be able to hear stories from not only customers who ride the service, but employees who build the service, right? And seeing what does it take to maintain it? What does it take to keep it running in inclement weather? When we get that snowstorm in Cleveland, how do we keep getting that bus out on the road? When it's a trifecta of events going on downtown, how do we keep people safe? Hearing from our transit police, really kind of lifting up those officers, sergeants, lieutenants, commanders, K-9 unit even, that can really get out there and connect people to our service. I also would like for the podcast to really highlight the political side of transit. So folks can really guarantee an interesting podcast, every time that we come out there, and then also have commercials that really give you a snippet on what the family of RTA looks like as well. So I'm excited to be able to talk about technology and new programs and everything else to be able to get people excited about riding again.
Okay. All right. Thank you again for joining us and launching this very first episode. I'm still excited and I will remain excited. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone, for listening as well. We love to hear from you. Let us know in the comments what topics you'd like us to explore in future episodes. Your feedback helps shape the conversations we'll bring to Driving Connections. We'll be back with more conversations about the people, projects, and partnerships helping connect our community every day. Until next time, I'm Ron Allen, and this has been Driving Connections.
Thanks for listening to GCRTA's Driving Connections. Hear more rider stories, explore each episode, and listen on your favorite podcast platform at www.riderta.com/podcast.